Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Spiritual Growth Journeys. It's been over a month or more since I've made a video. I am so grateful for all of you to be here, and I'm excited for this video today. I've actually spent like 4 hours of my time preparing for this video. I had to upload photos and I had to write many pages of notes that I had to type up here because I have so much information that there's no way I'd be able to remember all of it that I wanted to talk about. So I have a lot of pages of notes. Then I have extra notes from talking to Yeshua about this stuff as well. So a lot to go over today. I am so grateful to be back. So I took off on May 10th to do a social media detox break, which was the best thing I've ever done in my life. I got so much peace and calm from not being on social media. I couldn't believe how peaceful my brain felt, my body, my nervous system, which was just like freaking out all the time because of all of the negative posts on Facebook and social media. Plus, Facebook kept shutting down my account and removing posts and just causing trouble for me. So it was just all stressing me out. And when I stopped going on social media, I was off social media from May 10th until June 2nd. The whole time I was off social media, I felt really calm and peaceful. It was so nice. And I highly recommend you all do a social media detox. The bad news was that when I came back on social media again, all I did was put up one post that was for my webinar that's coming up this week. And they immediately shut my account down and said that I was breaking cybersecurity rules, which I was not breaking. I've never broken any of their rules. They just make up phony baloney stuff about me because I'm telling the truth that they don't want you all to hear or see or know. I post a lot of truth and they don't like it. And so they just constantly trying to get rid of me. So they shut my account down for several days. I asked for a whatever you call it, reevaluation, whatever, appeal, I guess it's called. And they finally approved me to come back on, but now I'm having to not post as much truth anymore. I'm having to be very careful what I post. And it's not that I'm not being truthful when I'm posting. I just can't post the controversial stuff because if I post the controversial stuff, they're going to permanently remove my account. Now, I tried to create backup accounts because I was chatting with Stellar and Sarah and a few of my other friends who were helping me get through this whole tragedy of being removed off of Facebook for several days. And they had said, oh, okay, go set up new accounts. So I went and set up a new Gmail account, set up, wasn't connected to me at all. I didn't even use my name. I used a totally different name. Went in, set up Facebook accounts. I tried 3 times in a row to set up Facebook accounts, and each time they shut it down and said that I was breaking their rules, which all I was doing was setting up an account. I hadn't even posted or didn't even have my account finished. Like they didn't even let me set up an account. And what I found out is they've been tracking me right to my IP address on my computer. So unless I go use somebody else's computer to do all that stuff, which I don't really have the ability to do that. I live out in the middle of the country here. I don't have access to other people's computers. My husband's not going to let me use his computer because he uses it for his business and he just won't let me near it. He's afraid I'm going to, break it. I'm not good with technology. So he's really afraid I'm going to do something bad to his computer. So basically, if I lose my Facebook account, that's it. I'm just not on Facebook anymore. So because they won't let me set up any new accounts. So, what I recommend you all do is connect with me on Telegram. I have a Telegram channel. I believe it's Kimberly Palm Telegram channel. Let me go in and look just to make sure. But you need to be following me in other places. You need to go to my website, spiritualgrowthjourneys.com, sign up for my newsletter so you can hear what I'm up to and see postings for new videos or whatever. And then my channel, yeah, it's Kimberly Palm. I have 710 subscribers to my Kimberly Palm channel on Telegram. That's on Telegram. You won't be able to comment. You can like it and do emojis, but you can't comment. I used to have a group where people could comment on Telegram, and everybody was posting all kinds of baloney that I did not want in my group. Plus there were bad guys sneaking into my group and I had to keep kicking them out, and troublemakers in there, and people promoting their goods and services to my people who I didn't give approval to, and on and on and on. So I had to shut down the commenting group in there, but you can at least see my posts when I'm posting truth and information, important information. At least you can see it on Telegram. I'm also on Signal. I have a Signal group. That's a group that you can actually comment and talk to me and discuss and all that. You can request to join it. It is Spiritual Growth Journeys. I'm trying to see what let me see if I can see what the actual name of the account is. Let's see, group link. Yeah, you'll have to just search for Spiritual Growth Journeys on Signal and request for me to add you, and then I can add you to that group. And that one you can chat away with me and you can put posts and all that kind of thing. I'm just going to ask you not to, promote your goods and services and things like that in there. But you can definitely put up posts and talk with me and everyone else in that group. And that is on Signal. And then I have, let's see, I'm on WhatsApp. And I'm also on Instagram. I have an Instagram channel. Now my Instagram channel is called, let's see what this one is called. This is all important. Kimberly Palm, all one word, 333. So Kimberly Palm 333. That is my Instagram channel. It's actually at Kimberly Palm 333. Okay, and you'll see my Spiritual Growth Journeys website. You'll see my photo there. I have 553 followers. So you can follow me on Instagram, and I think you can comment on Instagram. You can also message me on Instagram. So that's in case that the assholes at Facebook permanently kick me off because they keep trying to do it. I'm going to be really careful what I post from now on and not post anything that rocks the boat because I don't want to lose touch with all of you. So that's what I'm going to do. But anyway, so I was off on a break, and then on the 12th of May, we took off for Europe. We went to Europe, and we went on a Knight Templar and Mary Magdalene tour, and it was my own tour. We some of it we did with groups. When we did the Portugal part of the tour, that was with tour guides. When we did the France part of it, it was me. I was the tour guide taking my husband to all the Mary Magdalene sites and all the Knight Templar sites in southern France. And so today you are getting an esoteric history class. So you're going to want to take notes. This is going to be a long video. I spent a long time preparing all these notes. Like I said, I'm going to be teaching you about a lot of history, a lot of true history, a lot of lies. I'll be disclosing a lot of the lies. And you're going to learn a lot of controversial stuff here that you won't get elsewhere. And it's a long video, so if you can't watch it all straight through, then stop it and then watch it, start back up at the point. Just take a photo or do something to remember where you stopped at so you can pick it back up and watch it over the course of a few days or several days or several times throughout the day if that's what you need to do. But this information needs to get out. And for those of you who haven't been following me for a while, if you're new to this channel, welcome. I am a spiritual teacher. I'm an ascension guide and spiritual teacher. I'm a psychic. I have all kinds of little superpowers that I was born with. They run in my family. They go back thousands of years in my lineage on the female side of my family. All the women were priestesses going all the way back when with all sorts of gifts. And what I do is I'm here, to help humanity to ascend. I have a whole list of missions. One of them is bringing back Christ consciousness to the planet, especially the divine feminine Christ consciousness, Hathor, Isis, which are also known as Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary. Mother Mary and Hathor are the same being. That was one aspect of her. Another aspect of Mother Mary, or the Divine Mother, was Kuan Yin. She's had several incarnations on this earth. Mary Magdalene's have had several incarnations on this earth as well. And I was there with them 2,000 years ago. That was the last time I was in a physical body. Okay. My how do you want to say, the consciousness and soul that operates this Kimberly palm body is a tiny fractal of my 12 density, high dimensional angelic self. I am what is called an Elohim angel and creator. I do things like creating stars. I've even been the consciousness of stars, creating universes, all sorts of things. That's what my higher self does. And an aspect of my higher self is a guardian to planet Earth and has been here for thousands of years protecting Mother Gaia, because Mother Gaia is a close friend of mine. And when I say Mother Gaia, I'm talking about the consciousness of this planet. She is real. She's a being. She's a living, breathing being. She's a very dear friend of mine. She's actually my soul family. And so part of why I came here was for her to be here for her during her time of ascension, as well as all of you ascending. And I've also been a guardian, not just to her and this planet, but to many different people on this planet. My higher self is a guardian angel. When my Kimberly body's asleep at night, I leave and I go into different timelines and shut them down if they're bad. I go travel all throughout the time space continuum, rescuing people. I've rescued lots of children here on Earth in this timeline from tunnels, and rescued kids from trafficking teenagers. I've rescued women who were going to be raped. I've got them to like turn right over here and turn left over here and stuff like that to save them from getting murdered. I've saved people from getting murdered. That is what I do as a guardian angel. I protect people. And the reason why I'm obsessed with the Knight Templars and the Cathars of southern France and Portugal and all those areas is multifold. Number one reason I'm obsessed with them, or not really obsessed, but just interested in the history and just had to go there a couple times in a row, is because last time I was in a physical form, I was there with Mary Magdalene 2,000 years ago, and southern France is where she landed on the boat with Mother Mary and a whole bunch of the other apostles and their families. There were like, I think 39 people on the boat, something like that, that all wound up in the south of France. It landed at Saint Marie sur la Mer, or de la Mer, which is Saint Mary by the Sea. We ended up there. We wound up living in preaching in parts of Aix-en-Provence, and then also Occitanie, and also the Dordogne area and the Pyrenees Mountains. That is where we lived out our lives. Mother Mary and St. Joseph of Arimathea actually didn't live their whole life there. They were there with us for several years, and then they went over to Glastonbury, which is where they preached the Gospels and started the first Christian church in the UK. And they were buried actually in Glastonbury, St. Joseph of Arimathea and Mother Mary. And so the people in southern France, the Occitanie people, have been dedicated to Mary Magdalene for over 2,000 years. The Cathars are basically a more modern version of the Essenes who were killed. They practiced a lot, pretty much mostly or all of the same rituals, minus like some of the Jewish stuff. That's the only thing they were missing. But the Cathars were basically the same as the Essenes. They all revered Mary Magdalene. They went by her teachings. They used her teachings, which were the original Christian church teachings called the Way. Those were the original teachings of Miriam of Magdala and Yeshua. And Miriam, for those of you who don't know, she was his wife. And I have a book. You can go to my website, spiritualgrowthjourneys.com, and you can read their true history, not the history in the Bible, which is all a lie. The whole Bible is just a disaster. The original Bible was 777 books. They removed 711, and then they rewrote what was left over many times over, including changing his name to Jesus in the 1800s, when his name was Yeshua, and it's actually more like a breath, like the sound of breath. It's Yeshua. That's really his name. It's really like the sound of your breath. That's really his name, and not the Jesus character. There is no letter J in Aramaic. There's no letter J in Hebrew to this day, which were the languages spoken back then. And if you go to gematria or gematrix.org, you can put in Jesus and put in Lucifer and then put in Yesu and Satan, or Jesu and Satan, and you'll see why they made his name Jesus. They made it, number one, because it means hail Zeus, and they worship Zeus. It was Zeus worship. And number two, because Jesus is the same gematria as Lucifer. And Jesu, Jesu, is the same gematria as Satan. And so they did that to trick all of you people that are Christians into worshiping Satan and Lucifer. And so if you've been saying Jesus, every time you're saying that, you're praying to the wrong dude. So just thought you might want to know that. But the whole history is in my book, Walking with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. That's all in there. And you can get that book on my website. It's not available to the public on an Amazon site or somewhere like that because it's too controversial to be in the public. So you only get it as a PDF through my website. Someday when all the dark entities have been cleared off the planet, I will be able to have that book available to everyone on the earth. But until then, I have to keep it in witness protection, just like I am. I'm in what you call universe witness protection, which is why I don't tell anyone who I really am. So the only people who know that are my close friends. My close friends, some of my clients who I trust know who I am. And not even all of it, just some of it. But I have to stay in that, what we call universe witness protection. I asked Yeshua recently because Stellar was trying to talk me into revealing to you guys all the goodies. And I asked him if it was okay. And he said, hell no. So there's still bad guys that will snuff you out and your family out and yada, da, da, da. Because of my bloodlines on both sides of my family and for multiple different reasons. So, but you guys will eventually get to hear this information when he says it's okay. At that point, I'll be able to tell you guys the whole thing of who I am and why I am here doing work for him and for her, these two people. Why am I here working with them and for them? And as their representative here on this earth, along with several of my other brothers and sisters like Stellar Fairbairn and Mikala. So we've got a whole group of us that were there with them 2,000 years ago. And we've all been, some of us have been Cathars and Essenes and whatnot in past lives. So anyways, so I'm here to restore the true teachings of Yeshua to the earth and the true Christed information, especially the divine feminine part of the Christ. That's why I'm here. And I would not have come for any other reason than that. And restoring that now, helping you guys ascend. And now today you're going to learn a ton of information. But before we do that, I wanted to remind you all that this coming Friday, which is the summer solstice, Sarah, Rosemary, and I are doing our online webinar retreat. It's open to women and men, ages 18 and over. Doesn't matter what sex you are. It's online. You can go to my website, spiritualgrowthjourneys.com. There's a webinar page there. It says webinar. You can go there, learn all about the webinar and the scheduled classes. Sarah will be teaching you about past lifetimes and how to deal with that. I will be doing a channeled guided meditation to heal you. It's going to be a full body healing meditation to heal your body, mind, and spirit. That is a summer solstice meditation. I will also be teaching you a class on how to meditate properly. And Rosemary is going to be doing some shamanic wisdom that has to do with her medicine wheel she's created. And she's going to be giving away 3 free art. She's going to do a drawing for everyone who attends and give away 3 free first edition art pieces of her medicine wheel. And I am also giving away 5 spiritual protection kits with crystals. It's a crystal spiritual protection kit that will be infused with some Yeshua energy and healing energies and protection energies and angelic energies and that type of thing. And I will be giving away 5 of those to 5 lucky people who have basically signed up for this webinar. So if you sign up for the webinar, at the end of the webinar, your name will be in the drawing. You don't have to be present to win. And you don't have to be present on the webinar because we will be recording it. So it's 10 a.m. Pacific Coast time, which is Los Angeles time, to 1 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, and then again on Saturday, because you've got 2 classes Friday, 2 classes Saturday being taught by different people. I'm teaching on Friday, and then Sarah and Rosemary are teaching Saturday. And we are recording it, so you'll be able to watch it again. Make sure this is still recording. Yeah, good. I'm still recording. I haven't used this technology for a couple months, so my throat is dry. So I am getting over COVID. I went over to Europe, and when I arrived in France, actually on the way over to Europe, my husband was watching the news and he said there's a new strain of COVID in France and Portugal. And I immediately said, bullshit, there's nothing there. They're, making that up, blah, blah, blah. So I arrive in France. Everybody seemed healthy. The skies were blue. It was gorgeous there. Everybody was healthy everywhere we went. Then we flew over to Portugal we went from Bordeaux, France, over to Porto, Portugal on Ryanair, I think or not Ryanair, it was EasyJet. We took an EasyJet over to Porto, and everybody's healthy there. The skies were blue. 2 days later, they start spraying chemtrails everywhere, just everywhere. You can see them all over the place. And then immediately that day, you start hearing people coughing. And then it got worse. It was worse and worse every day. And then flying home through all the airports, people were coughing in every airport we were in. On the airplane, almost half the airplane, coughing, coughing, coughing. They basically dumped a disease on Portugal and France using chemtrails. And they warned us ahead because the cabal always tells you what they're going to do to you before they do it, because they believe that they get off scot-free if they do that. I don't know why they think that. That's not true. Sorry, now I'm getting overheated, so I'm going to take this off. I was cold because my husband has the air conditioning just way too cold in this house. It's like 80 something outside. And now I'm hot. So anyways, they basically sprayed everybody with a disease. I came down with it. My husband came down with it first. I was a day behind him, and we're still getting over it. I'm kind of congested. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but this part of my face is congested with yellowy sinus gross stuff. My husband had to go to the doctor today and get a antibiotic. He was supposed to have hip replacement surgery 2 days ago. They had to postpone it because of the COVID, and now he's getting it on the 27th. So please pray for him for healing. He's getting total hip replacement surgery, and very worried about him because he's 63, so he's not a spring chicken. And so we've got that going on, but that was postponed. And so we're trying to stay healthy and stay away from people, because if he gets it postponed again, he says he's going to freaking die because his hip hurts him so much. He's in a lot of pain. I took my back out on the way to France, and then I took it out 2 or 3 more times on my trip. So I spent my entire 3 weeks in Europe. We were gone 3 weeks. Whole 3 weeks I spent in excruciating pain. I tried using as much like ibuprofen and stuff as I could, but it upsets my stomach, so I could only take a minimal amount. So that was kind of a nightmare. But other than that, I'm going to be going over with you now all of the stuff that I learned. And I hope you will all sign up for our webinar this coming Friday that we are doing. It's going to be really awesome. We're doing this in place of the women's retreat that we were having, but we've opened it up to men too. So you're going to get to learn everything we would have taught you at the retreat. Well, not all of it. There would have been twice as much stuff because that was going to be like 4 or 5 days worth of stuff. This is 2 days. Or actually, it would have been, 3 or 4 days, and this is 2 days, and they're just half days, not full days. So we're giving you about half of the information you would have gotten at the retreat, but for a tiny fraction of the price, because the retreat would have cost you, $1,700 or something, plus airfare, hotel, rental car, food, all the, everything. And this is $333 love investment. That's it for getting 6 hours of classes with the 3 of us. So it's a really good deal. And again, you can find that on my website. All right, so make sure you have paper and pen. You may want to pause this video and get a paper and pen so you can take notes. You're going to be learning a lot of history. I'm going to show you some photos. Hopefully I don't screw up with the photos. First, I'm going to go over all the history info, and then I'll go through the photos because I have ADD really bad and I've got to kind of keep it distinct and focused. I do the squirrel thing a lot, so I have to be really, really careful. Let's see. All right. So what we did is we flew into Toulouse. We flew into Toulouse, France, which is Occitanie, and that was the area of the Cathars. I've talked about the Cathars in a lot of past videos. They basically, if you want to learn about the Cathars, you can read my book about Yeshua and Mary Magdalene because there's info in there. You can also research the Cathars online because I'm not going to go over all of their info today with you. I can kind of tell you a little bit about it. They originated from an anti-materialistic reform movement within the Bogomil churches of the Balkans, calling for what they saw as a return to the Christian message of perfection, poverty, and preaching, combined with the rejection of the physical. The reforms were basically, they were Gnostic Christians who were vegetarian and very devout to Mary Magdalene's teachings. They revered Mary Magdalene. They knew that Mary Magdalene and Yeshua were married and had children. They were also involved in protecting the bloodline of Christ. They did that. They were very spiritual Gnostic Christians, and the Catholic Church hated them. To my surprise, a lot of the counts that owned the castles all over Languedoc, Occitanie, all these areas down there in southern France that I visited, a lot of them were all Cathars or protecting the Cathars. They were very into Gnostic Christian spirituality, basically. And so that was a really cool thing down there until the Catholic Church, the Vatican, decided to murder them. So this whole area of southern France at one time was called Gaul. It was run by the Roman Empire. It had been attacked over time by all kinds of people. It was attacked by the British multiple times, by the Vikings, by the Spanish, by the Germans, by the Prussians. I think even the Turks at one point. The Italians even attacked this area. All these areas where we were had all kinds of wars throughout history that were fought in those areas. Lots and lots of wars, but there's a lot of ancient Roman ruins. All of the museums in Toulouse and those areas, they've dug up all kinds of ancient Roman amphitheaters and Roman statues and Roman jewelry and just all kinds of stuff. You can go see all the Roman stuff there in Toulouse at the museums. Lots and lots of Roman artifacts. Toulouse is known as the Pink City. It's a beautiful city. I felt very safe walking around there. And we stayed right by the Capitol building, and you can walk to all the major sites. You can walk to restaurants, and it's very easy to get around Toulouse. You can literally walk all over the whole city if you're in good enough shape. Otherwise, you can take Uber. They do have Uber there, which we used quite frequently while we were on our trip. Actually, the whole time we used a lot of Uber. And Toulouse has something very famous there, and that is the church of, well, they have several UNESCO sites. They've got they have a monastery there that's very, very famous, and that is a UNESCO site. And then they've got the Church of Saint Sernin there. And the Church of Saint Sernin is basically where two of Yeshua's apostles are buried. Okay, we've got Saint Simon and Saint Jude are both buried. Their remains are in their belongings are in that cathedral, along with a whole bunch of others. And Saint Sernin is also named as Saturnin. He was one of the apostles to the Gauls, and he was murdered. This was before the Vatican was created. This was during Roman times. Saint Cernan, who was a very devout Christian of the original way, the original Church of Christ, not the false Vatican one, but the original teachings, he was murdered by the Romans, and they dragged him through the streets of Toulouse with bulls. They used bulls, and they dragged him all throughout the streets and killed him and shredded the poor guy. And we actually learned in pretty gross detail what they did to him. I'm not even going to go into it in this video because I don't want to make you guys barf today. What they did to him was terrible, but his remains are there, and there are a lot of miracles that happen because of him, which is how he became a saint. But that is a UNESCO site, and you could feel that St. Jude and St. Simon really were interned, that their stuff was interned there, because you could just feel the energy down in there of that. So it's not being made up. I actually asked when I was there, because last time I went to southern France, I went into some places like the place where they claim they have the skull of Mary Magdalene, and they don't really have the skull of Mary Magdalene. They lied about that. That's just a money maker. It's basically just about making money. There's a lot of these churches that say they have the relics of this famous person and that famous person, and they don't really have those relics or the bones or whatever. It's just a money making venture. But in this case, they really did have the remains of St. Jude and St. Simon. And because I'm psychic and I'm an energy feeler and all that kind of thing, I could feel their energy there, and it overcame me so much that I just started bawling. And my husband thought there was something wrong with me. He doesn't realize, who and what I am and what I do, and he doesn't know any of this stuff. And so I had a really hard time there. I literally left the church. It's a beautiful cathedral. I'm going to show you guys pictures of it. It's really beautiful. But I left there crying because I could just feel their energy of those two apostles. And those two apostles were really good apostles. They were not bad guys at all. They were really good. And I could feel their sacred energy there. And it just made me kind of break down and cry. It was very emotional for me. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. So going back to the Cathars, between the year 1022, the Cathars were all over southern France. There was almost 1 million of them murdered in the Albigensian Crusades between 1022 and 1136. They were condemned by 8 local church councils, the last of which held at the city of Tours. Declared that all the Albigenses should be put into prison, that's the Cathars, and have their property confiscated. The Third Lateran Council of 1179 repeated the condemnation. Pope Innocent III's diplomatic attempts to roll back Catharism were met with little success. After the murder of his legate Pierre de Castelnau in 1208, and suspecting that Raymond VI, Count of Toulouse, was responsible, Innocent III declared a crusade against the Cathars. So Raymond, the Count of Toulouse, was a Cathar. A lot of the counts that lived in these castles, and I didn't realize this, most of these castles, which I visited, I went into these castles, the counts that lived there were Cathars. They were very devout followers of Mary Magdalene. They followed the original teachings of Christ. They were Gnostic, spiritual, religious Christians. My throat is just I'm still getting over COVID. Pope Innocent III declared a crusade against the Cathars. They called that the Albigensian Crusade. He offered the lands of the Cathar heretics to any French nobleman who was willing to take up arms. So a lot of the French noblemen took up arms, and the Catholic Church wound up murdering almost 1 million people. They burned them all alive. They had a belief that back then, that if you put the body in the ground, that the soul could come back in again and take revenge upon whoever killed them. So they burned all the Cathar villages, and they burned all the Cathars. They either burned them alive, or after they killed them, different ways they burned them. And the reason they did that and incinerated them, so you're not going to find millions of Cathar bodies all over the place, because they literally and they literally burnt them and turned them to dust. They did that because they believed that the soul would not be able to come back and take revenge if they did that. So they burned them. And it's the same thing they did to the what do you call it, Knight Templar. So I was trying to tell you guys earlier, I have this infatuation with the whole Cathars and the Knight Templars for multiple reasons. One reason because, of course, I lived in this area, and Mary Magdalene, I was one of her 30 priestesses, and she was, you know, doing all these teachings down there, which eventually turned into the whole Cathar movement. The Cathars basically were followers of Mary Magdalene, and they, you know, over time. And so I have a connection that way through her, through Mary Magdalene, to them. I'm very connected to them. But then there's a second, more important reason, and that is because my higher self, which is a guardian angel, like I said, to this planet, was the protector of a lot of Cathars. My higher self, my angelic self, was protecting Cathars. So I was down in southern France as an angel for I don't know how many hundreds of years watching over Cathars. So I'm very connected to them. I also was protecting Knights Templars. In fact, um, for any of you, if you ever meet my husband or my son in person, do not say anything to them about this whatsoever, because unless they wake up because they don't believe in anything spiritual, they do not know their past lives, but I do, because I know everybody's past lives, because I am a psychic. And I happen to know because Yeshua actually told me that my husband and my son were both Knight Templars. They were brothers, and they were killed by the King of France. Killed them, actually had them killed when he rounded up all the Templars, which I'll go over in a little bit with you all. But and I was actually their guardian angel. And I asked Yeshua, I'm like, if I'm their guardian angel, how come I wasn't able to protect them and keep them safe? And he said, it's because, you know, I was just one angel, and there were demonic entities that took over the rulers of those places that caused all this. He said the demonic entities are the ones that took the rulers over, caused the death of all the Cathars, caused the death of all the Knight Templars. That if you're just one angel, you can't really fight like millions of demonic entities. You just can't. So that's basically what happened. But I was my husband and my son's guardian angel when they were Knight Templars, and they were brothers. And it's interesting because both my husband and son in this life are totally obsessed with Templar history. My husband watches The Curse of Oak Island every week, which is where they're hunting Templar treasure that was buried on Oak Island by the Knights Templars. Oak Island is a little island off Nova Scotia, Canada. And the Templars brought their treasure there in the, I think, 1300s or something like that. And so I've got my husband and my son who are Knight Templars and are both really into that thing. In fact, my son even has a Templar sword, like a copy of an actual, it's like a reproduction of what they look like back then. But they're both really into it, and they don't know why, but I know why. And Yeshua even told me what their names were back then when they lived back then. And I was able to go into the history books. I can't tell you, I'm not allowed to give this information out, but I was able to go into the history and actually find them. So I was able to prove that, yeah, there were these Knight Templars with these names that existed, and their descendants still exist today. So that's so those are the three reasons. So I've got my connection through my husband and my son. I was a protector to these people, and also because of Mary Magdalene, I'm very connected to the whole Cathar Templar thing. So it's kind of a little obsession with me to study all about them and learn all about them and figure all this stuff out. So all right. So basically, from 1209 to 1215, there were the Crusader. Well, actually, there were the Crusaders that started around like 1000 something. There are what you call the Crusaders. They went on the Crusades over to the Holy Lands, and some of them were involved in helping the Vatican capture the Cathar lands and kill and murder the Cathars. So now when we say Crusaders, we're not talking about the Knights Templar, which was a different subgroup of the Crusaders. We're just talking the Crusaders, which were just knights who went over to the Holy Lands to fight the Muslims in the Holy Lands. So they worked for the Vatican, Crusaders. They all worked for the Vatican, and they were involved in murdering almost 1 million Cathars. So basically, they effectively drove Catharism underground by the year 1244. And the Albigensian Crusade had a role in the creation and institutionalization of both the Dominican order and the medieval Inquisition. The Dominicans promulgated the message of the church and spread it by preaching the church's teachings in towns and villages to stop the spread of what they called heresy, which was what they thought that the Cathars were heretics against the church, because they were practicing the original form of Christianity, not the bullshit lie version that the Vatican created. So while the Inquisition investigated people who were accused of teaching heresies, because of these efforts, all discernible traces of the Cathar movement were eradicated by the middle of the 14th century. There's just no more Cathars. I mean, they slaughtered all of them. Some historians considered the Albigensian Crusade against the Cathars basically an act of genocide, which, duh, yeah, it was genocide. Anybody who doesn't think it was genocide, it's like, come on, French people killing French people in their own country because they didn't agree with their religious beliefs. That would be like me going on a killing spree of all Jews because I used to be a Catholic, or I go on a killing spree of all spiritual light worker people because I'm a Mormon or some other thing like that, whatever. I'm just making that up, but I don't subscribe to any religion anymore. I used to be Catholic. I'm not a Catholic anymore. I haven't been a Catholic for about 9 years. When I found out all the truth about them, that's when I said, no more Catholic, no more. Bye-bye, Catholic Church. So, all right. The first place we visited when we were in Toulouse was the UNESCO site of Saint Saturnin, which I told you was the saint who Saturnin, who was dragged through the streets of Toulouse by a bull for following Christ and for preaching the original Gospels of the Way. They murdered him. Then after we went to Toulouse, we took a train to Carcassonne. Okay, Carcassonne. Carcassonne is one of the only left completely walled medieval castle villages left in Europe, because a lot of them were bombed out by the Nazis during the war or by the Allied troops during the war. So it's a fully enclosed, gated, it's like inside of a big castle village. It's like a village with a castle and the whole thing. So we stayed inside of there. It was built, I think they built Carcassonne maybe 700s or something like that. It actually had been, Carcassonne actually was pre-Roman times. It's very old. There were people living there way before the Romans were even there. They had troglodytes. And in fact, all of southern France, the areas where we were, people had been living in those areas for 150,000 years. They had troglodytes and all kinds of other prehistoric people that lived there before that in caves all over those areas. So Carcassonne has been an ongoing city, and the same with Toulouse, for thousands of years. It's been under different rule, it was under Roman rule and, different rulers and stuff, and then French, of course. But anyway, so we went to Carcassonne. So the original count of Carcassonne, the one that was his castle that he owned and everything, he was a Cathar. He was a Cathar. So they murdered him and they took away his thing. And I think they actually married his wife or something. She actually lived. And then she, I think, got together with the bad guys to save her her medieval village. Like most of her people were murdered and slaughtered, and at the very end there were just like a few left. They were either starved, they were starved out, murdered, slaughtered, and in the end, Lady Carcassonne, I think her name was Lady Carcassonne, she wound up marrying some other guy who was a bad guy to save her territory. But her husband was murdered for being a Cathar and a Cathar sympathizer. He also hid Cathars when they had the Albigensian Crusade. He was hiding Cathars and protecting them. And that was no bueno as far as the Vatican was concerned. So then Stellar Fairbairn, here, I'll show you a picture of Stellar. See if I can, I'm going to do screen share. How do I do screen share? So that's Stellar, if you can see her. And Stellar, I've had her on my YouTube channel. Stellar has worked with Craig Purvis for many years on beautiful albums and does recordings in a lot of these Magdalene cathedrals in Portugal and France. She's an amazing spiritual singer. Her voice is healing. Like you listen to her voice and you actually receive healing because her voice is full of light codes and Magdalene codes. She's a Magdalene priestess and a dragon, and she's an amazing angelic being of light. So Stellar and her husband, John, came and picked my husband and I up, and they took us on a Magdalene and Templar tour, which we will talk about. So the first place that we went to was we tried to drive through Ren-le-Ben, and Ren-le-Ben is where Miriam of Magdala lived with Yeshua, because Yeshua was in his light body and he stayed on the earth for actually several years after he was crucified. He stayed in southern France with all of us for a while in Rennes-les-Bains, and then he eventually left and went on to do his heavenly work. But he was there in his light body for quite a while, which is why there are reported historical sightings in southern France of people actually seeing him there. He wasn't there physically in a physical earth human body. He was there in his light body because his wife was pregnant when he was put up on the cross, and he had children, twin daughters that he had to, watch over and everything. And she actually eventually was forced to marry somebody who she wound up having more children with. I think 3 more children. She had, I think, 5 total. She was forced to marry, unfortunately. Back then, that's what they did. It's that or they execute you or whatever. So she had more children that are from her bloodline, from her Magdalene bloodline, which is very sacred. And Yeshua was okay with that because he didn't want her getting killed. He wouldn't want his love to be killed, and he couldn't be there physically in a physical body. He was gone at that point. So, but anyways, where they lived was called Rennes-les-Bains. That's where they lived. And they lived in a cave near there. They didn't live in the actual, like the village there. That's just the closest location to where the cave is. It's the closest like place to where it is that you can identify with. So they didn't really like live in that village. So if you went into the village, you're not going to like find their house where they lived, because they lived in a cave somewhere in that area. We went to a place called the Font de l'Amour, which is the Fountain of Love, and that's where she did some ritual ceremonies, and she baptized people and did teaching. And there used to be a church there at one time, a worship place during the time of medieval times, and all the way up until they murdered the Cathars. They had a little church there where people would go, to worship, because it was a very sacred, magical place where she did her work. And that's actually what's in the picture that I just showed. If you go back to here, we'll share that again. Go back there. So behind us is actually a waterfall. It's behind my head. There's a waterfall, a real pretty one back there. And that is the Font de l'Amour, where she would, and there's like a river running through that, like a stream and everything, and several waterfalls, and it's just gorgeous. And it's just a magical, mystical place, like you'd expect the Lady of the Lake to rise up with a sword or something. Um, but that is basically where she did her baptisms there. She did ceremonies there, all kinds of stuff. So, and then we went to Rennes-le-Chateau, which was one of the Templar fortresses where they had their like last stand against the King of France and all the troops that were rounding up all of the Knight Templars to kill them, because the Knight Templars were, of course, gotten rid of, which we'll go into. So we went to Rennes-le-Chateau, which is very famous, and Stiller gifted me two beautiful Templar crosses to wear around my neck that were handmade by a little grandma lady there in Rennes-le-Chateau. Then they're very magical. They just, you can feel these crosses just have so much power in them. I can't even explain it, but they're really magical. The little grandma that makes them obviously has a lot of Magdalene superpowers in her, because you can feel it through these things. But I've got those. And the Templars, when they were in Rennes-le-Chateau, they buried treasure there. And it was found by a priest in the 1800s at the church there that I'm going to show you. And the church there, just like everything else the Vatican does, it used to have really good energy, and then the Vatican went and put a huge statue of Satan in the doorway, which is real evil. And the energies in that church when I walked in were really vile and evil, because the Vatican had perverted that place, which was a sacred Magdalene place in honor of, it was the Church of Mary Magdalene in her honor, and it was very sacred, but they had perverted it. So while I was in there, I cleared it. That was one of the things I did, is I cleared that church. Cleared the energy. I used my voice. I posted a video on Facebook with me singing. But I also invited Archangel Michael in, and we did a little light work in there and cleared that place. So there's that. But anyways, the priest found their treasure in the 1800s, and then he suddenly became multimillionaire out of nowhere because he cashed in on all the Templar treasure that was there. And that was just a small portion of Knight Templar treasure. So then she took us to the Pic de Bugar, which is the mountain peak of Bugar. And Bugar is a tiny little cute little town, and it's right on a really powerful ley line. Just like Rennes-le-Chateau is on a powerful ley line. All these places are on super powerful earth ley lines to draw on the power. The Knight Templars were really, really good at building all their churches and their fortresses on ley lines so that they could take advantage of the power of those locations. But anyways, this peak is in this little cute village that only has a population of 234 people. There's a lot of hippies that have been going there since the 1960s to do retreats. Lots of UFO sightings there, thousands of them. There's been, over the years, lots of people have seen UFOs at that place. There's supposedly a little door that opens in the mountain there, and out comes ships. It's very similar to Mount Baker or whatever that Mount, I can't remember the name of the mountain. There's a mountain down where ESETI Ranch is, or James Gilliland is. It's the same thing, where the ETs live inside the mountain. Probably giants in there too. Who knows? It's a very powerful place. You go to this place and you can feel the power there. You can feel the energy there. It's just really intense. It almost makes you feel dizzy, the energy there. And it's also kind of high up in elevation. It's like 4,000 feet up or something. So it's really interesting. They call it the upside down mountain because it's got this really weird geology thing going on there. But the energy there is just mind blowing. There's a lot of light warriors and a lot of new age kind of weirdo people that go there and do all kinds of spiritual retreats. It's been drawing new age weirdo people to it for a long time. And then she took us to the Gorge of Galamus. And the Gorge of Galamus is where the cave of Mary Magdalene was, where she preached. She did a lot of preaching there. There's several caves. There's the cave in the town of what is that town? It's where I went on my last trip to southern France. It's over in Aix-en-Provence. There's a town in Aix-en-Provence called Saint Baume. It's Saint Baume. And Saint Baume, they have the Church of Marie Magdalene there. They also have a cave there up the mountain. You have to hike 45 minutes up a steep mountain, a couple thousand feet up, to go to this cave where she preached. She had a lot of caves where she did preaching. They used caves as churches back then because they could hide from all the bad guys. And when I say bad guys, I mean the Romans who would drag you by bull through the streets and kill you back then for being a Christian. That was back in the day when they murdered Christians. So they had to do all their preaching in secret in caves. So we went to this gorge of Glamouse, which is also like another ley line area, really powerful. The energies are so powerful there, it really knocked me for a loop. I really felt kind of like dizzy, a lot of pressure on my head. I mean, you could really feel the energy there. And then my husband and I went and rented a car, and we drove to the Dordogne River Valley in Périgord Noir region, which is close to the border of Spain. Well, this whole area we were in, we were close to the border of Spain. And people have been living in the Dordogne River Valley for 150,000 years, and you can actually go into the caves there and tour different caves that have cave drawings that were cave art that was created 50,000 years ago. I think the one cave my daughter and I went into last time I was in France, I think some of the art that was in there was as old as 75,000 years old. Different types of animals that haven't lived in a long time. They're all extinct. They painted pictures of a lot of extinct animals, but there's also animals you can make out that we still have today that have evolved. Bears, wolves, lions. They had lions there during that time period. They had all kinds of different birds and creatures back then that have gone extinct or were all hunted to death. So it's kind of interesting. But the Dordogne River Valley has a lot of villages and castles where Knight Templars lived, and also Cathars were. And one of the places we visited there was the town, beautiful little town of Dome, which has an incredible view over the whole Dordogne Valley. And there are two towers, I'm going to show you pictures of them in a minute, where they imprisoned 70 of the Knight Templars for between 11 and 13 years. And the Curse of Oak Island show cast, the show that's on TV, they actually went there to this place to do research. So my husband and I went in there. He just had to go in there. He was all excited about it. And the whole time he's in there, he looked like he was under a spell. I think he was kind of like remembering, like accessing past life at that point. But they basically, the Knight Templars, while they were imprisoned in there, the 70 of them, the brothers, they created a whole like church inside of there, like because they were very devoted to Christ and Miriam of Magdala and Mother Mary. And so they carved out like the story of Christ's life in there, and they carved out all of their family shields, and they carved out all kinds of sacred geometries and codes and special types of crosses and all sorts of little stories and all sorts of secret code and information and everything that they were recording for history so it wouldn't be lost because they knew they were going to be killed eventually. So they were recording all the stuff in the stone there. And so you go in there today, some of it's been destroyed with time. It's just gotten eroded. There's a lot of stuff you can see. They would not let us take photographs, unfortunately, because the photographs ruin it or something and make it, get destroyed. So they wouldn't let us take any pictures inside of there, which was kind of a bummer. But we were able to have a paper that showed what each of the things means. Like they had a whole interpretation thing to explain in English what each of the symbols meant that were carved in, and it was really fascinating. So I highly recommend you all visit these places someday if you can, if you're interested. But that's where they were imprisoned, and there must have been light workers who went in there and cleared the place because there was zero negative energy in that prison where they held and tortured 70 Knight Templars. You would think you would feel that vile energy in there, but it's actually all cleared. It felt very light and bright and I felt like Christ light in there. So I'm feeling some light workers had to have gone through there and done some cleansing on it. But it was very cool. And then we went to Baynet Castle, which is where King Richard the Lionheart lived for a few years ago. I mean, for a few years. We actually went into his bedroom, and that was kind of cool. My husband was pretty excited about that. And his mother was from that area of France. That's where she was from, Aragon, Catherine of Aragon. That was his mother. So we went there. That castle was really cool. We went to Castle No, which has that was owned by I think he was he was either a Cathar and he was hiding Cathars, or he was a Templar and hiding Cathars, or both. I can't remember. But the count who owned that castle was also murdered for basically being a good guy and being like a Templar and a Cathar and all that kind of thing, and he was helping the Cathars. So that's another place with the same kind of history. But they have the largest medieval weaponry and artillery collection of anywhere in France. It was pretty incredible. I'm going to show you some pictures. Let's see. All right. So then we went to Portugal. Portugal is known as the first and only entire Templar country. The whole country is all Knight Templar. And that's because when um, um, when the Knight Templars were hunted and thrown out of France, the ones that weren't imprisoned and tortured and murdered ran away to Portugal, because the first king of Portugal, his father was a Knight Templar. So he took the Knight Templars in and protected them and allowed them to set up their headquarters there. But they wound up having to change their name. There's a whole long story around it. They had to change their name to the Order of Christ. They couldn't be called the Order of the Templars anymore. There's a lot of reasons about that. Would take me an hour to explain. But they went to Portugal, they set it up as their headquarters, and they kind of took over the whole country. The Templars ran that whole country of of Portugal. And they built all the cathedrals and churches, the original ones, all over in like 1000s, 1100s, 1200s in Portugal. So when you go through Portugal, you see Knight Templar symbology on buildings everywhere, in every church, every cathedral. It's like, oh, there's a Templar symbol. There's a Templar symbol there. I mean, they were everywhere. They had the five-pointed stars, this other kind of star. I can't remember what it represents. I think the sun or something. The Templar crosses were everywhere, the skull and bones, a whole bunch of different, the five-pointed star, and just a whole bunch of different Templar symbols. There's like a lot of different Templar symbols, and they're pretty much in every all the old churches and cathedrals in the country of Portugal. So you can see where they put their mark everywhere in that country. And after they were thrown out of France, not only did they change their name to the Order of Christ, but they also had lots of other little orders under the Knights Templar with different names other than Knights Templar. Like they had the Priory of Zion, they had the Knights of Malta. They had a lot of different Templar groups, and they weren't all good. Some of them were bad, some of them were good. The original Knight Templars of southern France were really good. And we'll talk about the details of that in a few minutes here. But the places that we visited first when we went to Portugal is we flew into Porto, which was a beautiful city, and I loved it. I just loved that city. I really enjoyed it there. We took detours with we went with tour guides. We went to Guimarães and Braga. And Guimarães was like the birthplace of the whole country of Portugal. That's kind of like where the country began, where the first king was, and the first castle was there and everything. And that was kind of where the beginnings of Portugal, where it started, that's their whole, like the government center of Portugal from from 1,000 years ago. And then we went to Braga. Braga is like the Vatican religious center of Portugal. It's like the first cathedral was built there by the Templars that they have there in like 1000 and something, and by the Freemasons and Templars that built that there. And both of those places are absolutely stunning, gorgeous. They're really high up in altitude, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. The views are incredible. Cannot recommend them enough to you. If you have a chance to go to Portugal, you need to go to Guimarães and Braga, because they're, I mean, I would go and live there easily. It's just so beautiful there. It's just incredible. And the food is amazing everywhere in Portugal. I love the food. Fresh fish everywhere, amazing fish. Just, oh my God, the sardines, the sea bass, all the white fishes, the cod, everything there. Oh my gosh, just incredible fish, salmon, just everything there. Just, and all their food and their pastries are incredible. The little custard paste, it's like custard pie that they're famous for. Those, I could eat 5 million of those. They're so good. And then of course the Porto wine is amazing. I'm sorry, the port wine. Port wine is amazing. And that's grown in the Douro River Valley, all the grapes. But they have other areas throughout Portugal where they make wine. But the Douro River Valley, which we went on a tour of, is one of the biggest. And the best thing is they don't spray all the grapes with all the poisons that they spray them with here. So I can actually drink their wine and not get sick. So I actually had a bunch of it flown home so that I can have healthy wine to drink at home. Once in a while, I'm not an alcohol drinker. I drink it once in a blue moon, for special events, but just we'll have like a glass or something once in a blue moon. But if I'm going to have it, I want to have the kind that doesn't have all the poisons and chemicals. So anyway, so we went to those beautiful places, and we got to walk on the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, which is the pilgrimage or the way of St. James. That's where all the pilgrims have been going for 2,000 years to follow the way of St. James the Apostle, which winds up at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, northwestern Spain, which is really close to the border of Portugal. You end there, and that's where they hold the remains of the Apostle St. James. That's where they have his remains. And by the way, St. James is reincarnated. He was one of the brothers of Yeshua, and he is reincarnated, and he's actually a friend of mine. So I know him, and he's a pretty good guy, and he's got a lot of superpowers. He's a pretty cool guy, very cool guy. So, but pilgrims follow these routes as a form of like a spiritual path or a retreat for their spiritual growth. They've been doing it for a long time. It's popular with hikers, cyclists, walkers, and a lot of tour groups. And you can go there and you can walk the whole path. It's, I don't know how many thousand or hundreds of miles that it goes, but it goes through Portugal, Spain, and part of southern France. It's kind of a cool thing to do if you wanted to go do a spiritual tour. So, all right. The Way of St. James was created and established in the beginning of the 800s following the discovery of the relics of St. James. They found his relics and his bones and all that, and they decided to set up this whole pilgrimage to get pilgrims to come to see his relics and him. So that's when they set it up. And it was created, there was a pope named Alexander VI who declared it in the 1400s. They declared it one of the three great pilgrimages of all of Christendom, along with Jerusalem and the Via Francigena to Rome. It's like a way to Rome, a pilgrimage thing to Rome. So the other places we visited, we went down to Lisbon. We took a train ride that was really beautiful down to Lisbon, or Lisboa as it's called. And we visited the Knights Templar headquarters, or what they call the Order of Christ at that point. Their headquarters in Tomar. We visited El Morel Castle, which is a castle where they were hiding and fighting. And Tomar is where they have the Convent of Christ, and they filmed the movie Damsel there. So if any of you have seen the movie Damsel, which is with the dragon and Millie Bobby Brown, They filmed that at the Convent of Christ there. It's one of the most incredible places my husband and I have ever visited. He kind of didn't want to leave there. He was very like intrigued and mesmerized with that place, and he was just blown away. It was fun watching my husband go to all of these Templar places because he doesn't remember who he was before. I know who he was, but I think when he's going to these places, he's getting like weird sensations, and he's getting kind of like he was almost kind of like in a trance. I can't even explain it, but it was just pretty trippy watching him go through these places, knowing that he had been to these places in a past life. So that was kind of interesting. Um, so we went there. We also visited Sintra, which is a really beautiful place that has another big Knights Templar castle way up on a mountain there. I wasn't able to go to it because I can't climb and hike that far. I'd have to be 20 years old and really physically fit. I would never have made it there. A lot of people do go there. You can hike up to this thing, but we're talking you have to do a 2,000-foot hike up a mountain. I can't do 2,000-foot hikes. I did those when I was 20, but not anymore. I'm going to be 60 this year, and yeah, can't do that. So so we went to Sintra, which is a really cool place. I highly recommend everybody visits that place. It's close to the ocean. It's just a beautiful place. The energy there is over the top and really makes you dizzy. We also went to what's called they have a Knights Templar initiation well that was built by a 33-degree Freemason who was a count who owned the castle there. There's a castle there that we went through on a tour that was just incredible. And that count, the property and grounds there are just mind blowing, and they go all the way back to, I think, Roman times. There's old Roman ruins all over there, and medieval ruins that go back, a couple thousand years. And he built this initiation well that goes all the way down into the ground. I can show you pictures of it, but it is supposed to replicate initiation wells that were used by the Knight Templar to do initiations of Knight Templars, basically. But the energy in this place literally makes you dizzy. It's really, whew, it's obviously on ley lines, and it's just I can't even explain the energy. It's kind of over the top, honestly. I had almost like a heat stroke when I was there. I had to sit down, and my husband had to go down into the well without me. I couldn't do it because I was going to pass out, actually. I was really kind of blown away by the energies there. Plus, I was severely overheated that day, which doesn't make life any better. Um, but anyways, so now I want to go over some information about the Knight Templars, who they were, what they did, because there's a lot of lies about them. The original Knight Templar group that was started were very good guys. They were not bad guys. But over the years, when they hired some soldiers, the soldiers that worked under them, there were some soldiers that were corrupted. They were bad, and they gave kind of a bad reputation that made some of the Templars look like they were bad. But the original actual Templars were devoted to Christ, devoted to Mary Magdalene, and they were very pious, very religious, and very spiritual. And they literally ate, breathed, and slept spirituality, and they were very good guys. They were all about values and honor and virtue, very virtuous and stuff like that. But there were other splinter groups that weren't so good. They got corrupted with greed and money and power and stuff like that. But the original Knight Templar group was good. They revered Mary Magdalene and also John the Baptist. They thought of John the Baptist as the original pope. And in fact, there's to this day in the country of Portugal, which is a Templar country, they name a lot of guys in the country of Portugal John. There's a lot of guys that are named John. That's the English name, and I think it's pronounced Juao, Juao or Juao. I'm butchering the hell out of the name because I have a hard time pronouncing Portuguese language. I had a really difficult time with their language while I was there. I speak fluent Spanish, fluent Italian, or not really fluent Italian, but I speak some Italian. I speak pretty fluent Spanish. And I speak French, but I've never learned how to speak Portuguese. So I had a really hard time because it was very different from all the other languages. There were some crossover words in Spanish and some in French that were similar, but I had a hard time with it. I'd have to take a lot of classes to figure it out, which I didn't have time to do before I went to Portugal. So I just did the best I could with it. At least I knew how to say obrigada, which is thank you. And I highly recommend when you go to any foreign countries, you learn how to say hello, goodbye, please, thank you. Where's the bathroom? Where can I get water? I need a doctor? Where's the pharmacy? Just real basic phrases. You need to learn those in every country you go to. And you need to be polite everywhere, because if you want people, when you're a guest in somebody else's country, if you want them to treat you with respect, you have to treat them with respect. And they're very polite in Europe. When you go there, they always say, hello, senora. Like if you're in Portugal, they're going to say, bom dia, senora, which is, like good day, hello, or they'll say hola, senora, whatever. But they're going to greet you. And the same in French country, French areas, they're going to always say, bonjour, ça va, whatever. They're going to say that, and the same in Italy. They're very polite in Europe, all over Europe. They're super polite. And so if you go in there and you act like a demanding American, bossing your way around, they're not going to like you, and you're going to get treated like crap. But if you go in there and you treat them with respect, and you greet them and you're super polite to everybody, you will have a great time. I promise you. I have a great time every time I go to Europe, because I'm overly nice and polite to everybody, and I try to speak their language as best as I can. So, all right. So back to the Templars. So the Templars revered Mary Magdalene and John the Baptist. They followed the Gnostic Christian teachings. Let's see. They followed the original teachings of Christ and Mary Magdalene, not the baloney Vatican teachings. So the Vaticans thought of them as heretics. They were more like Essenes, they were, the Templars were practicing a lot of the ancient Egyptian mystery school stuff. They used a lot of Egyptian symbology throughout everything they did, lots of Egyptian symbology. They used alchemy. They also knew about the Atlantean and Lemurian teachings and did those as well. The main Knights Templars were chosen from noble families, and they needed to be able to afford to buy 2 horses and to feed those 2 horses. They actually kind of took a poverty vow once they became a Knight Templar. They had to give away, they couldn't have money and all that. They had to devote themselves to the order, kind of like how priests do today. But they basically had to be able to at least afford to get into the Knight Templars and buy 2 horses and feed them and all that, and for the lives of the horses. So they came from mostly noble families. They usually picked the 2nd or 3rd son in those families, not the first sons. And the reason why is because first sons had to marry and have children, and they inherited all the property and wealth of their family. And so if a family didn't have a 2nd or 3rd son, then nobody went and joined the Knight Templars from that family. In order to join the Templars, you had to be a 2nd or 3rd son, or later, 6th son, 7th son, 8th son, 9th son. I think there was a movie with Nicolas Cage that was kind of a Templar movie that was about the 7th son of the 7th son or something like that. But basically, you couldn't be a firstborn son and be a Knights Templar. The order was started by a few Crusaders, mainly Hugh de Pan and a few others, who were protecting the Holy Lands in Jerusalem from the Muslims. So back in the day, Jerusalem was run by the Muslim Empire. It was totally run by all the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire, all that. And what happened is the Crusaders went there to take back the Holy Lands. And so the original Templars, most of them were Crusaders. They started as Crusaders, which were there to take back Jerusalem for the Vatican, for the Christian Church. But what wound up happening is they formed their own subgroup, which were the Knight Templars, that were formed as an order devoted to Yeshua. They were kind of almost like priests with swords. So think about if your priest at your church became like a knight with a sword. They were basically knights and priests rolled into one. They were really religious men, devoted to Christ and devoted to protecting Jerusalem. But the biggest thing is they were protecting the pilgrims traveling from Europe to Jerusalem, because those pilgrims were getting slaughtered by Muslims, and they were having all of their things stolen from them, all their property that they brought with, all their gold, all their jewels, they were all being stolen. And so the Knight Templars were formed mainly as a brigade to protect the pilgrims, the Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. And they eventually became the first bankers. And how they became the first bankers is the pilgrims were having all their stuff stolen. So what they would do is they'd give it to the Knights Templars, and the Knight Templars would take it and they would protect their money and all their properties and all their stuff. And they would take care of all their stuff for them. And so what would happen is they would take their stuff and then they would give them a sealed, embossed like registry, like a slip that said, that they're owed like 200 things of pounds of gold and candlesticks and this and that. They would have like a list of all the stuff that the Knight Templars were keeping for them and protecting for them, jewelry, pearls, diamonds, whatever. And they would get this receipt, like a receipt, and they had to keep that receipt with them in a safe place, because anywhere they went in Europe where there were Knight Templars, they could give that to them and they could get money. They could, like, let's say they had 200 pounds in gold and they needed 1 pound of gold, they could hand that to a Knight Templar, like banker kind of thing, and they would get 1 pound of gold back out of that. And then they would cross it off and they would say now they have only 199, not 200. So they would get a new registry with a new stamp that would say now they have this and they received this. And the Knight Templars did not charge interest. This was the first, what we want to call good banking system. It was a beneficial banking system for everyone, because their possessions were being kept safe and they weren't having to pay interest or money or anything like that to these Knight Templars. They didn't have to pay them anything. How the Knight Templars wound up getting rich is because the people would die in wars, or they die in childbirth, or they die from disease, or they'd be murdered. And then there were wills and all that kind of thing back then. So then the Templars would wind up getting to keep their stuff, because either the person didn't have family to come claim it for them, or they were they didn't have family, or something happened, and so the Templars would wind up getting a lot of stuff, because people would die like crazy back then, right? So they had lots of treasures piling up, more and more and more, in gold and all that, from all the people who died from whatever. So that's what happened. But when they were doing the banking system, it wasn't the cabal banking system. So the first banking system was the Templar system, and that was the way banking should be done. Okay, that was a righteous way of doing it. The Khazarian cabal, Khazarian mafia, who worship Satan and Lucifer, those guys, they took over the banking system at some point in history. I don't know what year it was. I'd have to go look into that. But they took it over at some point, and they corrupted the whole banking system and made it into this thing where you pay them to have, like you pay them interest to have your house, and you pay them this and you pay them that, and you give them fees and you pay for your checks, and on and on and on. They just, nickel and dime you to pieces. That was all a Khazarian mafia cabal banking system. But the original banking system started by the Templars was a good banking system. It was very similar to the banking system in ancient Greece. They had one too that was a virtuous, noble banking system, where they would hold on to your possessions, and then you could come get them in the future whenever you want, and cash them in and all that. But they didn't make you pay them a bunch of money. So they were originally started to protect people's possessions, protect the pilgrims in general, and to protect the Holy Lands from being taken over again by the Muslims. They took over what used to be the Temple of Solomon, that was destroyed at some point. They took over that area. That became their headquarters in the Holy Lands, or in Jerusalem. They were really kind of obsessed with the Temple of Solomon. And let's see what else. Oops. I already told you about the sealed receipts. Okay, so the Knight Templars were an elite fighting force for their day. They were highly trained, well equipped, and highly motivated. One of the tenets of their religious order was they were forbidden from retreating in battle unless they were outnumbered 3-1. Even then, only by order of their commander or if the Templar flag went down. Not all Knight Templars were warriors. The mission of most of the members was of support to acquire resources which could be used to fund and equip the small percentage of members who were fighting on the front lines. There were actually 3 classes of people within the Order of the Knight Templars. The highest class was the Knight. And when a candidate was sworn into the order, they made the Knight a monk. They wore white robes. The Knights could hold no property and receive no private letters. They could not be married or have children. They couldn't be betrothed, and they could not have any vow in any other order, only that order. They could not have debt more than they could pay, and no illnesses. The Templar priest class was similar to the modern day military chaplain, wearing green robes. They conducted religious services, led prayers, and were assigned record keeping and letter writing. They always wore gloves unless they were given Holy Communion. The mounted men at arms represented the most common class, and they were called brothers. They were usually assigned 2 horses each. Like I said, they had to have 2 horses. They held many positions, including guard, steward, squires, and other support vocations. As the main support staff, they wore black or brown robes and were partially garbed in chainmail or plate mail. The armor was not as complete as the knights. Because of this infrastructure, the warriors were well trained and well armed. Even their horses were trained to fight in combat, fully armored horses. The combination of soldier and monk was a powerful one. As to the Knight Templars, martyrdom in battle was the most glorious way to die. So if you died in battle, that was the way you wanted to die back then. They used a lot of secret codes, secret geometry, numerology in their order. 6-pointed star King David and King Solomon was important to them. They put that all over their churches that they built in Europe. Also, the 5-pointed star was important because it represented the 5 elements, which were air, fire, water, earth, and ether, or spirit, Holy Spirit. They also believed that that 5-pointed star protected you from demons and demonic entities and negative energies. The Satanists today, our modern day Satanists, turn that star upside down as blasphemy to that star, because if you're what we call a good witch, or you're anyone who practices the ancient hermetic or the ancient Gnostic stuff, you're using a 5-pointed star face the right direction for protection and to represent earth, fire, water, wind, earth, wind, or air, fire, water, and spirit or ether. So you're using it for that. But the Satanists, they turn it upside down, just like they turn the cross upside down, and they invert everything. The cross that the Templars wore and used was an equal-sided cross. It was just like the original cross I've talked to you all about. It's in my book. I usually wear them. I've gone over this many times with you guys in past videos. The original cross was 4 equal sides, represent spreading Christianity to the east, west, north, and south. The Way, what was called the Way, that was the original cross of the Way. So they used a 4-sided cross that was equal. Theirs was a red color to represent the blood shed by Yeshua on the cross, and also represent salvation, of course. And so that was their cross. So now in 1307, King Philip IV of France, who was a real evil piece of crap, he was deeply in debt to the Knight Templars. He had borrowed billions of dollars from them back then, what would seem like billions now. And he wanted to seize their wealth. He owed them money. He didn't want to have to pay it back. And so he was a real piece of shit. And so since he didn't want to pay the wealth back, he just decided to murder all the Templars so he wouldn't have to owe them any money. So he basically trumped up a bunch of false charges. He he basically said that they were spitting on the cross, they were denying Christ, they were engaged in homosexual acts, that they were worshiping a mysterious idol named the Baphomet, which is not true. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. He made up all these lies about them and went to the Vatican, went to the to the Pope at the time and said, oh, they're spitting on the cross, they're doing this, they're heretics, they're evil. He made all these Trump charges up because he didn't want to pay them back the money he owed them. So the other reason why he had them killed is they were protecting the bloodline of Christ. The fact that Mary Magdalene was the wife of Christ, they were protecting that information, and they knew all of the true stuff that the Catholic Church didn't want to reveal to us. They knew all kinds of teachings and secrets and information and mysteries that the Catholic Church did not want you guys to know. And so that was a main reason why the Vatican wanted them all dead, because they were like a threat to the Vatican and to their power, because Knight Templars wanted you to be a sovereign being, devoted to God, not devoted to a phony, false religion. So, they made up all these lies. The Knight Templars never spit on any crosses. They never denied Christ. They were not homosexuals. None of them were back then. In fact, if you did that kind of thing back then, you were killed immediately. Okay. They didn't allow that kind of stuff back then. Let's see. The Baphomet thing, we're going to talk about what Baphomet really is. So you've all been lied to for a long time about Baphomet, even told, oh, the Freemasons worship Baphomet. That's a lie. So here's the thing. Baphomet was actually a corruption of the name Muhammad or Mahomet. Muhammad, who wrote the Quran, who founded the Islam religion. He was also called Mahomet. And what they did is the Knight Templars, because they were fighting Islam back then and they hated Islam, they hated all of what it represented and they were fighting them. They wanted to make fun of Muhammad and insult Muhammad. So how they insulted Muhammad is they would call him Baphomet. It was a name they made up because it was a silly name. And I talked to Yeshua about this and I asked him, what the heck? And what Yeshua said, let me see. He said that basically it was like an insult, that they wanted to insult Muhammad, and so they like made up this silly name, and that is what all the Templars, when they wanted to make fun of Muhammad and Muslims, they would call their leader Baphomet. That's what they would call him, is Baphomet. There was no statue of a goat back then. It didn't exist. They didn't have a figure named Baphomet that they worshipped. And Baphomet was basically a perversion of the name Muhammad to spit in the face of the Muslims because they were at war with them. So basically, that was the accusation that was made. So Baphomet, others argue that it might be a cipher or a code word, but its origin is unclear. Our tour guide told us in Portugal that it had something to do with John. It was a mixture of Metatron and John the Baptist or something like that. They like put two names together, but what it really had to do with is it had to do with insulting Muhammad. It was just an insult. All right. So the goat-headed figure with the wings and the torch that people sacrifice children to, and they show him standing with kids because he's like the god of sacrifice. That was not created until the 1800s. So that statue and that image, it was not medieval at all. It was never medieval. That's all a lie. You guys have all been lied to. The Baphomet image with the goat-headed figure was created in 1856. That's about the time period that they changed Yeshua's name in all the Bibles to the Jesus character, to the Hail Zeus, Satan, or Lucifer character. The Baphomet goat-headed guy was created in 1856 by Eliphas Levi. Levi is a Jewish Khazarian name, by the way. He was a French occultist and Satan worshiper. And in his book, Dogma and Ritual of the something Magi, of the High Magi or something, he basically created this and put it into a book in the year 1856. He created the image of the Baphomet, and it became a Satanist occultist image that it had been used by Satanists and occultists since 1856. Okay, so up until then, there was never any image of a Baphomet. The word Baphomet was just an insult to Muhammad. Okay. The symbol was later adopted by modern occult groups and the Church of Satan, but it has nothing at all to do with the original Knights Templar. So all of you people who are believing all these lies that people like Billy Carson and all them spread, that the Knight Templars worship Baphomet and the Masons worship the Baphomet, that none of that is true. The Masons don't worship Baphomet. They don't use that. Only the dark ones do that worship Satan. And there are little off branches of the Masonic people who are not good, and they do those things. So let's see. Historians believe that the Templars were mainly Orthodox Christians who were very into esoterics and Gnostic Christianity, you know. Let's see. The idol worship and heresy accusations were made up by King Philip to dismantle their order and seize all their wealth. So he said they were worshiping idols and just all kinds of stuff. You know, they would have statues of Mary Magdalene because they revered her, and also Mother Mary, and also Jesus, and also or Yeshua, and also the apostles. You know, they revered them. So yeah, they had statues of them, but they weren't worshiping them. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else. Okay, so the number 13 has always represented the goddess and the divine feminine. It is also the number connected to Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, and other divine feminine teachers and leaders throughout history. And of course, the Vatican, who perverts everything sacred, got a hold of that. And what did they do? King Philip and the Vatican basically gathered, went and grabbed all the Knight Templars on Friday the 13th, 1307. So Friday the 13th, 1307, that's when they went and they sacked all of the Knight Templars. They rounded them all up. They ambushed them. It was the ambush the Templar Day, and that was Friday the 13th, 1307. And that's why that became bad luck, because that's when they ambushed and murdered and imprisoned thousands of Templars that they rounded up, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay. They rounded up him and a bunch of his other leaders. They put him in prison, and then they executed him. They actually burned him alive on a stake along with a bunch of the other leaders. And I told you why they do that, because they don't want their soul returning, so they burn them. And then the rest of them escaped and went to Spain and Portugal. And the first king of Portugal, who was the son of the Knight Templar, took them in, let them set up their headquarters. It became the first Templar country. And that's pretty much it. Now they had to change their name to the Order of Christ, and there were lots of other groups of Templars as well. There were Templars on Malta, the Knights of Malta, and those guys got corrupted. The Knights of Malta became corrupted and greedy and evil. That happened quite often back then, and that was about the 1400s. They started to become corrupted, 1500s. They were still operating in Malta even until the 1600s, and by the time of the 1600s, they were super greedy and corrupted. They've been corrupted ever since, and they're involved with the Vatican, of course. There are some subgroups of the Templars that are bad. There are still Templars alive today, the original ones that are still protecting the Holy Grail Cup of Christ, the Ark of the Covenant, and the other relics, the other holy relics. They've been protecting these for a couple thousand years. And the true Holy Grail, which is the bloodline of Christ, there's still a Templar group protecting them. The main Templars always remained devoted to Christ and to their spiritual practice. They did not get corrupted, and even to this day, there's still a group of them still alive. However, unfortunately, they did hire soldiers back in the day who would fight battles for them, and those soldiers would get corrupted and greedy and do bad things. And then it would give them a bad name. So that was a problem. A small group of Templars went to Oak Island off the coast of Nova Scotia. They buried a bunch of treasure there. The people are still trying to find it. I don't know if they will. They also went to Rhode Island in the United States. They built a tower there, and there's a rock on the beach in Rhode Island with Templar codes and markings on it. The Knights Templar, and this was back in the 12, 13, and 1400s. And the Knights Templar also went to other parts of the US, I think like Iowa or Ohio or somewhere like that. And they found all kinds of stones and burial mounds and things that have Templar markings on them that go back to between 12 and 1400. So the Templars were in America long before Christopher Columbus. Over the decades, the Templar Order survived and changed their name lots of time. The Freemasons came from the original Knights Templars. The original Freemasons were very good guys and built all the cathedrals and all the Tartarian buildings that were, wiped out at one point. But all the Tartarian buildings were all built by the Freemasons. Unfortunately, in the 1700s, the Draco reptilians and the Rothschild family infiltrated the Freemasons. So now you have groups of really good Freemasons and you have some groups of bad ones, like the Bohemian Grove guys, the Illuminati. Those are bad guys. There's these little subcultures under the Freemasons that are evil. They worship Lucifer and Satan. But the majority of Masons that you find in this country, like even our founding fathers were all Masons. They were all good. George Washington, all of them. That was back in the day before they were corrupted by the cabal. Those guys wanted to do the right thing. And no, they didn't worship Satan. They worshiped Christ. They were very into the Bible and into Christianity. So I'm going to ask you all to please do not immediately judge all Freemasons as bad guys, because that's a lie. I know many Masons who are really good people and very Christian. Some of them are Jewish, some of them are Mormons, some of them are even Native Americans that are, in the Masons. There's all kinds of people who are in the Masons, Black, white, Asian, every nationality. There are good ones and bad ones. There are some really evil groups that are corrupted, obviously, like the Bohemian Grove group and the Illuminati, but they're not all bad. So stop believing the bullshit on the internet that all the Masons are bad. They're not all bad. There are subgroups that are doing bad things, just like with the Templars. The original Knight Templars were not bad. It was the subgroups underneath them that went and got greedy and did naughty things. It's the same thing today with the Templars. So let's hear what Yeshua has to say about some of this stuff. I asked him for some messages for you guys. So he said that the noble or good Knight Templars are actually still alive today. Their descendants are still here, still practicing Knight Templars, and they are part of what the group that you all know as the White Hats. So there are not all the White Hats are Knights Templars, but the Knights Templars that are alive today that are still protecting the bloodline of Christ, still protecting the artifacts and everything else, and still protecting our planet, they are part of the group that we know as the White Hats. So he wanted you to know that. They're still alive. They're still doing their thing. They hide in the shadows because they don't want the cabal and the Draco reptilians to take them down. So they remain hidden. Nobody knows who they are. Okay. Because otherwise they would get murdered. Okay. Just like myself and a lot of other people who are in what we call spiritual witness protection. If certain people knew who we really were, then they would take us all out. So, okay. He also wanted you to know Satan, who's really known as Sataniel, that's his real name. He's completely gone, but his minions are still here on Earth and they're still causing a lot of trouble. But he also said that Sataniel originally came to planet Earth with the goal of destroying it. That was his whole purpose of coming here, was he wanted to destroy it. And he said his minions are still here, still trying to destroy the planet. They're trying to use nuclear weapons right now and start wars and all kinds of trouble. He wants you to know to not be in fear, to stay in love and truth, and know that you are protected and safe at all times. And he wants you to know that all of these bad guys are going to be gone, completely gone very soon. All the minions, they will be out of here extremely soon. So I would say coming up by the end of this year, or at the latest into 2026, there will be no more minions on this earth. They will be gone. So I want you all to look forward to that and kind of celebrate and be excited about it, because that's important for you to know. And because I asked him if he had any important messages for you, and that was the big one he wanted you to know. He said, Sataniel is gone. He's been obliterated, recycled back to source, but his minions are still here and they are trying to start a third world war right now. He wanted you to know that. They're doing it, but he said they will not succeed, and that the forces of heaven are fighting this bullshit, and that these guys are all going to get taken out really soon. So he just wanted you to hang tight. And no matter what you see on the news, any warmongering or fear mongering that you see, he wants you to stay in a place of neutrality and know that your state and love and neutrality, stay out of fear, and know that you are safe and protected. So now I'm going to show you some photos. I'm going to go back into my sharing. Okay. Let's see if I can find some photos to show you. Okay, so I was talking about some of the Knight Templars. So these are some of their symbols that they use. You can kind of see. That's a five-pointed star. That one has like a flower or something in it. And those are for protection, and they also represent earth, fire, wind or air, water, and ether, or spirit. These are different Templar symbols. Let's see if I can go to the next. Is it going to allow me to go to the next one? Yeah, that's a Templar cross. Oh, here we go. There's the arrow. That's another one. That's a snake eating something. It's another symbol. See if I can find the Common of Christ. No, what is that? That's the. Sorry, I have so many pictures here and they're really tiny, so I'm trying to find. Okay, so this is El Moral Castle. This is one of the Knight Templar fortresses in Portugal. This is near Tomar. It's really close to Tomar, where the Knight Templar headquarters are. It's called El Moral Castle, and you have to take a little boat over there, and then you can hike up. It's a ruined fortress. Let's see. Trying to find I want to find the dome pictures to show you. There's dome. These two towers, we went inside of them, and that's where all the carved out stuff is. They basically made like their own church that they created in there. But this is the prison where they were basically held. That's part of it too. It's the Bastille or prison where 70 Knight Templars were held in prison for 11 to 13 years. Some of them were there 11 years, some were there 13 years. And this is it. This is called Dome. It's a beautiful, this is the village of Dome, so you can see what it looks like. It's really beautiful. That's the view from the top of Dome out over the Dordogne Valley. That's a famous castle there. These are some really beautiful gardens and another chateau castle. That's a little church at the chateau. They have peacocks running wild everywhere. The troglodytes lived in these caves in the Dordogne River Valley for 150,000 years. They lived in the caves, and then they built medieval like fortresses into there to fight off the Vikings and the British and everybody else. They were living in here up until like the 1800s or something. They were still living in here. Now it's dangerous, and if you go in there, you can have stuff falling on you and killing you, so they don't like people going in there. That's angelic. So if you see those lines, it's like rainbow lines. That's not the light or the sun. That's actually one of the angels that was there with me clearing that place, because I had angels accompanying me everywhere clearing. Sometimes they show up, their energy, and there's like portals that'll show up. That's the Dordogne River. That's the Dordogne River. There's castles. There's another castle. I think that's Castle No that I was telling you guys about, that was owned by a guy who was actually a Cathar, and I think he was a Knight Templar, and he was the count that owned that castle. He was killed, and this castle was taken from him, and it right now it holds all of the different armor from all over. It's a boat ride down the Dordogne that we went on. That's another castle. There's just castles everywhere. You can see where people lived in the cliffs. Just kind of cool. Another castle. Do you know that there's 1,100 castles in the Dordogne River Valley? 1,100 castles. Just mind-blowing. Trying to see what other cool places I can show you guys. Is that Carcassonne? Oh no, that's Carcassonne. Let's see. Carcassonne. Trying to find Carcassonne. This is the Capitol building in Toulouse, which is really beautiful. I love Toulouse. It was very safe to walk around, very clean. It's such a clean city. People were nice everywhere we went. They have amazing chocolates. This is the Cathedral of Saint Sernin or Saint Saturnin, the guy who was dragged through the streets by the Romans with a bull and murdered for being a Christian devotee of Christ back 2,000 years ago. They have his bones, and this is the place where they have Saint Jude and Saint, who's the other saint? I told you guys, Simon. They have Simon and Saint Jude's bones and relics there inside of there, and I was crying in there. That's that church. That's inside that church. It's absolutely beautiful. It's the way they built stuff back then, just blows my mind. St. Francis of Assisi, some art, a lot of gold, relics of different saints. People make pilgrimages there. St. Sernin. So you can see some of the beautiful cathedrals that we got to go through. Let's see if I can find Carcassonne. This is kind of cool. That's another cathedral in the monastery. That's actually a monastery that we were in. Whoop. Let's see. Trying to find, is this Carcassonne? Yeah, I think this is part of Carcassonne. This is Carcassonne. So we were staying inside this medieval walled village. This is the cathedral in Carcassonne. Oh, that's a park in Toulouse. Wait, there's Carcassonne. See the angel. It's pretty dramatic. It's kind of like Disneyland for adults. That's the cathedral inside of Carcassonne. My daughter really loved this cathedral because the stained glass in there is just mind-blowing. She really loved. This is a picture that I was in our hotel, and she looks like me. Like she literally looked like me when I was young. Like if you were to take me and make me a teenager, that's like me. Like the hair, really white skin, red lipstick, eyebrows. I mean, it literally was me. I was like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, that's a picture of me on the wall. This is a beer my husband was drinking that was really good there. They have really, really good beer and wine. They have wonderful rosé wine all over Occitanie, Languedoc region of France, and it has no pesticides and no GMO and no Monsanto bullshit in it. It's healthy wine, believe it or not. And yes, Jesus turned water into wine for a reason. It's actually good for your heart if you just have a glass of it with a meal. It's getting drunk that is bad and evil. So if you look at this church, this is ruins of an old Knights Templar church in, I think this was Rennes-les-Bains, which is near where the cave was that Mary Magdalene lived in. And they have the six-pointed Star of David on there, and that's because the Templars were protecting Jerusalem and the Temple of Solomon. Solomon was King David's father, and that was their family crest, was that six-pointed star. That's where it comes from King David and King Solomon. You can see the star again. This is the Font de l'Amour, where Mary Magdalene baptized people, and that's what Stella and I were in that picture in front of this. And she likes to swim there. And it's very healing waters. It has these are like mineral baths there, and the stuff that's in the water there actually heals you. You can receive healing. There are ruins of a little church there up on the right where people would worship. That's part of the Font de l'Amour. That's part of the Font de l'Amour. This is in Rennes-le-Château, which is one of the big Templar fortresses. That's the view. Now, the cave where Mary Magdalene lived in is actually down on the other side of these bushes here. It's actually down on the other side of it's like on the side of the mountain. So you can't really get down to it from where we were, but it's basically on in the mountain here, in this area. That's where Mary Magdalene lived. This is the cathedral or church inside of there's Stella and John. That's the cathedral inside of Rennes-le-Château, the little church that was built by the Templars. And this was in honor of Mary Magdalene, this whole church. It's a church of Mary Magdalene, and they have a statue of a woman named Saint Germain. And it's not the Saint Germain that you guys know. This is a different Saint Germain. She's a female. Different saints. That's Mary Magdalene. That's her statue. So Saint Madeleine, they call her Maria Magdalene. That's her. That's her statue, and this church was devoted to her. I think that's Saint Francis of Assisi or something. No, I'm sorry, it's Saint Antoine. Saint Antoine. And it's Saint Anthony. And I sang in this little church and cleared it. In the doorway is a statue of Satan that's really scary looking, and that's Mary Magdalene right there on the center of the altar. That is an altar devoted to Mary Magdalene. That whole altar, and that's a picture of her right on it. That's outside of the church. That's the gardens. That's part of outside of the church. So that's all Rennes-le-Château. There's a cemetery back there. Can't go in, unfortunately. I like going through old cemeteries. It's kind of fun, but I wasn't allowed to do that. The view again off of Rennes-le-Château. There's a dragon. Dragons are real, people. They really lived. They were murdered off by the Draco reptilians or whoever came to the Anunnaki, actually, I think killed them all. Oops. This is Bugar, which is where they see UFO sightings, millions of them, and it's where a lot of hippies have been going to do ceremonies and healing stuff and whatnot and camping since the 1960s. It's like where all the UFOs land. It's an inverted mountain. It's like an upside down mountain. It's a really weird geology that you can't explain. It's like somebody took a mountain, pulled it out of the ground, and then ripped it apart and put it back in upside down. It's Bugar up close. It's on a really powerful ley line. You can really feel the energy there. The energy there is just mind-blowing. I'd love to go meditate there. This is on the way to the cave where Mary Magdalene did most of her teaching and her ceremonies. It's the canyon. What did I call that? I told you guys earlier what it was called. Let's see what it was called. It is called Gorge de Galamus. It's Galamus. So this is in the car on the way to Galamus through this canyon, and there's all these people who hike to this cave where Mary Magdalene did her teaching and her ceremonies. There's another video I made. We're almost there. This is inside the cave where she did her preaching. And there's Stellar in her beautiful goddess gown that she was wearing. So this is the cave where Mary Magdalene actually did her preaching. And it's very powerful. It's on an important ley line. And people make light workers, star seeds, and what do you want to call it? All kinds of people make pilgrimages. Christians make pilgrimages to this place by the thousands. Some ancient medieval, that's a grave. Somebody's buried there and turned there. It's actually a grave for a saint. It's like some saint. Stellar and me. Oh. All right. So let's see. Trying to see there's other stuff in Portugal. That was in southern France. If we go back to Portugal again, I wanted to show you guys Tamar. See if I can find Tamar. So this is Tamar. This was the headquarters of the Knights Templar. You have to kind of hike up to it. It was really hot that day. It got overheated, but that's the fortress of Tamar, where the headquarters of the Knights Templar, which became the Order of Christ. And this is where they filmed the movie Damsel. And you're about to see the courtyard where they did that. It's part of it, but that's the main part of it. So they filmed the movie Damsel here and actually all over this place. They filmed it. Oops, kind of out of focus pictures for whatever reason. That was that's a spirit right there. There's a spirit. It's all foggy, white fog. That's actually a spirit that was in there. It was standing right next to me. There were a lot of spirits in these places. Sometimes they showed up in the pictures, sometimes they didn't. There you go. This is the famous scene where the dragon comes in and eats the royal family who were murdering all the girls. They were taking virgin girls and throwing them to the dragons. This is a famous scene was shot here in this courtyard and other places in this place for the movie Damsel. But this is all Tamar. This is all was where the Knights Templar were all headquartered for quite a while. And see how beautifully detailed they built. I mean, the Templars built all this themselves. And I think they built it in like a 4-year period or something like that. Some ungodly, like quick amount of time. They had to have had help from extraterrestrials or some kind of supernatural forces, because a lot of the places that these Templars built, they only built them within a couple years. And if you were to build something like that today, it would take 100 years to build it. And they did it in a few. And the only way that could have happened is with supernatural assistance of some variety, extraterrestrials. Again, here's where they filmed Damsel. This is all the convent of Christ and Tomar. Oh, that was actually the grave. That's a gravestone for one of the Templars. Symbols. I had showed you that earlier. That's the village, I think, of Tamar. It's really cute. Or that might be Sintra, actually. That might be Sintra. I think that's Sintra. No. Yeah, that's Sintra. So that's Sintra. That's also, this place was owned by a count who was a 33-degree Mason. He's the one who built the Templar well. See if I can find pictures of the Templar well to show you. I had to get them from my husband's phone because I didn't get to go to it because I was too busy passing out from heat exhaustion. So this is the well that it's a Templar initiation well that this guy built. It was supposed to be a copy of the real thing that they used back then. It's got Templar symbology at the bottom of it. All right. Let me stop sharing and I'm back. All right. So I've been on here a really long freaking time, so I'm going to get off now. I think it's been a couple of hours. Yeah, it's been like 2 hours and 22 minutes or something. I don't know. So I'm going to get off. I hope you will all sign up for my webinar so you can come learn with me and Rosemary and Sarah. I do not get paid. I put a lot of time into these videos. All my videos that I've ever put up for you guys have been free classes and free teaching and free learning for you. They are not monetized. I don't get a dime, and I put a lot of hours of my time into these. So how you can help me out in reciprocity, because there is a spiritual law. It's called the law of reciprocity in the universe. You can't just keep taking from people. You have to actually energetically give something back. So how you can help me energetically to get back to me for a lot of the work I do for you guys for free, because I do a lot of work for free, is you can either buy copies of my books. They're on my website with links to either the 2 that are on Amazon or the 2 that are just on my website. Get my books. You can recommend them to people, recommend my books to people, or buy them as gifts for people. You can sign up for my classes that are on my Learn It Live website. It's learnitlive.com/Kimberly Palm, all one word. The link is down below in the description as well. But all my classes are there. I have 11 or 12 classes that you can take, everything from how to get all your own answers and become a psychic, how to activate, your powers, how to meditate. There's even a meditation in there for children, a guided meditation for kids that you can use for kids ages 5 and over, and teenagers or whoever, and even adults. It's really good for anyone. There's a past life regression program in there. You can find out about your past lives. There are all kinds of healing courses, energy healing courses, water healing courses, pendulum divination class, gems and rocks class. So you can learn how to use crystals and rocks for healing and protection and all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of classes in there. Basic meditation class, energy healing workshop that's like 9.5 hours of instruction on how to heal yourself and everyone else. All kinds of great classes in there. So how you can help me is either signing up for classes or books, getting books, or signing up for our webinar that's coming up, or recommending those. If you can't afford to do it, I totally understand, but you have the ability to recommend it to anyone you know who might be interested or who it might benefit, because the money from that is what pays for my husband's $40,000 hip surgery he's about to get, and my daughter has to get 2 major surgeries, and it pays for our food that we put on the table and all of that as well, because my husband is mostly retired right now, and so we have very little income coming in to support our family. I have a dependent daughter who is disabled, and so I need to have money coming in somehow, because if I don't get money from classes and books and things like that, then I would have to quit all this work I'm doing to help everybody, all my videos, everything I do, and go take a full-time day job. And I wouldn't have the energy to do a full-time day job, take care of my family and my daughter, and my cat, and help you guys. I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. So in order to keep me doing this work, I really need you guys to help me out. So that means either recommending my stuff to somebody or signing up for something. Because I'm not doing readings anymore, because my physical body has been falling apart for a long time, because I have spent the last 30 years of my life healing people, teaching people, guiding people, counseling people. I've given away too much energy, and it's really drained the life out of me. It's literally drained the life out of me. So I am now focusing on nurturing myself and healing my own physical body. And that's why I'm not doing readings anymore. But I will still continue to teach classes, because those are not as draining for me. And I still have my books, and I'm also working on creating an oracle card set that will help you answer all your own questions and be your own psychic. You can answer questions with the cards, which I'm channeling. I'm channeling all those from my higher self, and Mother, Father, God, and Yeshua as well, and Miriam, getting all that information from them that's going into the cards. But that is how you can help me out, is supporting me through classes or the books. And I had to put that out there because I have a couple hundred videos or more on this YouTube channel, and every one I've done, I have not one of them's been monetized, because if I monetize them, they'll take my channel down completely. Then I won't be able to be here to help you. And so they're not monetized, and I'm basically putting all this time in for free, and so I have to receive the energy back somehow. There has to be reciprocity going on, because if I'm just giving to everybody and not getting anything back, then that just physically is what really drains the hell out of me and causes problems for me, and isn't going to help me to last very long on this planet. So, anyways, just being honest, you guys, I'm always going to speak my truth. I'm not going to ever bullshit anyone, because Yeshua has been warning me since I was a tiny little girl that if I ever told lies, that all my superpowers would be taken away just like that, which means I won't be able to talk to him anymore. So I have to speak truth all the time, because if I don't, he is literally here with me all the time. Him and Miriam, they follow me everywhere. Everywhere I go, they are. So they watch what I do. They watch what I say. Whatever comes out of my mouth, whatever I do to other people, they watch it. So I am held accountable 24/7. Anyways, all right. So, oh God, my back is really hurting right now. So I'm going to let you all go. I'm going to go eat dinner, and I hope this has been helpful for you all to learn a little bit about the Knights Templar. And just remember that the Baphomet was created by a Satanist, Khazarian Jewish guy named Levi in the 1800s. He's the one who created the goat god of sacrifice. The Knight Templars had nothing to do with that. They used the word Baphomet as an insult to Muhammad. That was their way of insulting him, because they were in a war, religious war against the Muslims. They didn't worship any character called Baphomet, because there was no character called the Baphomet back then. It didn't exist until the 1800s. So just thought you all may want to know that. Hopefully you learned also new things about the five-pointed star, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing unless you turn it upside down. And a lot of these symbols, a lot of the sacred geometry that you see is really good until the dark ones get a hold of it and invert it all and put it upside down. So that's what they do. Anyways, hope you all learned something. Please stay healthy, happy, whole, and I will see you on the next video. Bye, y'all.